Got quiet all of a sudden. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you had a great holiday. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. And we will start out with our invocation from Randy Simonson. Randy?
Hey, thank you. Yeah, you can stand if you'd like. Happy New Year. It's going to be a good year. And so we're going to ask God to help us have a good year. Lord, thank you for this opportunity to meet together for the county, for the people of St. Croix County. Thank you for the people. Thank you for these men and women gathered here. I pray that you'd give them great insight and wisdom in this new year. I pray that they would have peace in their meetings and that they would hear each other out, Lord, that they would be more concerned about the welfare of the community. And we just thank you for your influence, for divine influence. We're still on the planet, so there's still hope. And we thank you that you're still in charge. And we would give you charge of St. Croix County and of these meetings and of our lives. And I speak a blessing over every person here, that they would prosper and do well and be at peace, and that they would prosper as their souls prosper in health and just abundance in every way. Their families would be blessed, their children would be happy and blessed, and their spouses and families. We just thank you for each person. Thank you for each home. We thank you for each person in this county. We ask that it be a great year in St. Croix County, and we give you all the praise and thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you all.
And I think we're ready for a roll call. And I believe we've heard from Supervisor Van Sumeren, correct?
Correct.
Correct. He's late. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. I did not get any requests, but is there anyone from the public who would like to make comments to the board? Any public comment? Any public comment to the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion for a consent agenda? Supervisor Osnes, a second. Supervisor Counter. And we're ready to vote on the consent agenda. Uh-oh. We're not ready.
Supervisor Barclough is here now.
I'm sorry, who made the first in that?
I believe it was Osnes and Counter.
Oh, well, it's now Osnes.
Yes. And Counter was the second. Thank you. The consent agenda is confirmed. We do not have any presentations or recognitions that I'm aware of, so we're going to move on to the county administrator's report.
Yeah, financial report is through November. And if you listened at administration committee at all, normally I say everything's just fine. Well, for the most part, everything's fine. Our insurance funds, though, we maintain a couple of different insurance funds, and it turns out it hasn't been a good year for insurance. Both premium costs, we've been seeing double-digit increases for several years now on premiums, but also claims. So we self-fund for a lot of the insurances. So work comp, health insurance, liability insurance, all three of those are up this year. Not a good claim trend year, so all three of them are in the red. Now, we do maintain fund balances in all of those insurance funds, so we have good years and we have bad years. It's just this is a bad year for all of those funds, so you'll see a dip in those fund balances. Overall, though, the department heads have been doing a good job, and I think we're on track for the most part for the county being on budget. If there are any questions, though, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sorry, any questions? Okay, we'll move on to our first business item, confirmation of county administrator's appointment of Dustin Hawkins as finance director.
Motion and a second for that?
Oh, do we have a motion, Supervisor Ramberg, and a second, Supervisor Cook, County Administrator?
All right. So Dustin Hawkins has been our Assistant Finance Director for the last 2 years. He's filled in twice now for us as the Interim Finance Director. And I was finally able to convince him to take the role of Finance Director. He brings, I think, nearly 20 years of experience with his accounting degree to us. And I think he's going to do an excellent job for us.
Any questions or discussion? Is Dustin here? Oh, there he is.
You want to come up to the podium?
Yeah, would you like to say a few words, or we at least want to give you that opportunity?
After you vote.
Like a few words, or...
I just want to thank all the board members for confirming my nomination. It's been, like I said, 2 years I've been here. It's been some challenging times, but I've met a lot of great coworkers to help me get through it as well. It's been a very rewarding position the whole time I've been here, and I'm really excited to lead the finance department in the future and continue to improve on the good team that we have in place right now and the good things we're doing. And I've also, Ken's quite the jokester, I know. So I figured I'd maybe just try and look up a nice finance joke for him. So the pessimist sees the glass as half empty, and the optimist sees the glass as half full. But the accountant sees it as imbalance. So yeah, I mean, we're not geniuses in the accounting department, but I thought I'd give it a try. So yeah, I look forward to working with you all, and thank you again.
Thank you. Any discussion? Let's go ahead and vote, please.
I know.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Congratulations, Dustin. Look forward to working with you. Okay, we're going to move on to our second business item, resolution authorizing a referendum to increase the tax levy for public safety positions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Supervisor Fiedler, second. Supervisor, I'm sorry, Hanson. I'm going to ask Supervisor Fiedler to start out, just to give us a little background on this particular item as the chair of the Public Protection Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I wish I could be like Dustin and have a nice joke here to tell us, but it's that most difficult of issues we take up, a tax increase on a referendum. But I would simply give us just a little bit of background. Public Protection Committee has heard from all of these people repeatedly over the past year about what's happening in their departments. We had a special meeting at the end of last year to consider the possibility of this referendum after reviewing it at earlier meetings, and it was adopted 5-0. So across the spectrum of our members, we, after hearing from all these people in detail, we felt this was a worthwhile thing even though it does result in a modest tax increase, the public safety needs of our county really require this in our judgment. Just a quick background, back at the end of 2022, Ken had asked for the staff to tell him what did you need in your department to keep the county functioning efficiently, and they made a request to him of 45 positions. When we considered it and he considered it and came back to us, we narrowed that down very substantially, almost cutting it in half to 24 positions. We then went to a referendum in April of last year, and frankly, it was a $3.5 million referendum across a spectrum of positions, and it was rejected somewhat resoundingly by the citizens of St. Croix County. Last year, as we developed the 2024 budget, we made an extra effort to see what we could do within that normal budget process of adding back some of those positions which were needed but which were rejected by the referendum. In our 2024 budget that we approved 13 of those 24 positions. So we started out with a request more or less for 45. We went to 24. We took care of 13 of those positions. So that left 11 positions that were felt that were needed by ourselves and the county administrator unfilled. So when we took this up at Public Protection, we addressed the public safety officers involved, and we cut it back from what was originally considered, back maybe in September, October, to a final number of 8 positions. And I think in the documents you've gotten, you will see what those 8 positions are. Basically, a couple of corrections deputies, 2 mental health responders, a youth justice early intervention specialist, the sheriff's investigator, district attorney investigator, and a deputy clerk of court. That was rather summary information that you received, and I will be the first to say we need to have more information in your hands if we adopt this referendum tonight, so that you can go to the taxpayers with a lot of information as to why each of these positions is justified. And I've talked to the county administrator, and make a long story short, I can assure everybody that within about 10 days, we're going to develop very detailed explanations as to the need for all of these positions. He's going to go back to the department heads, work with them, and have them come back as to why these people are vital to our public safety. So we will have that information. I'm going to stop at that point and just say, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll turn it over to the county administrator for any additional things he'd like to add by way of timing for this, the importance of it, and anything else. And I'd be more than happy, or any members of the PPJ committee, I would urge you to speak as well if you have further thoughts on the issue.
Yeah, I think the only points that I would add is when we did the 2024 budget, we had new monies coming in from the state, and we also really looked at the sales tax and took some additional sales tax money to get us those 13 new positions. So that was not a normal budget year. We had more resources for the 2024 budget than we've had in many, many years. And we won't have in 2025. There won't be those same new revenue sources in 2025. So the only way that these additional positions will be added is if we ask the voters for that. That's the mechanism that the state provides us, is to ask the voters, we want to exceed our levy limit. And so the $896,000 that we're asking for, I think, is a modest request. And, you know, I appreciate everything that you guys have done to get us as many of the positions as we have. But these additional 8 positions are really the rest of the supply line of the public safety process. 9 of the 13 positions we added were in law enforcement. So when you add to law enforcement, you're increasing the volume and capacity in one area, but not necessarily some of the support areas. So the mental health co-responders, which will go away at the end of 24 if they're not extended, you know, are going to drain back into law enforcement. The corrections deputies, the sheriff investigator, the deputy clerk of courts, those are all to support the increasing capacity that we have in other parts of public safety. So that's the area that we continue to need to look at. And I'm just telling you, for 2025, without the referendum, we're not going to find new money like we did last year to fund these.
Questions, discussion? Supervisor Rambert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As one of the members of the Public Protection Committee, I know we had a lot of questions and searching for how to explain things. And one of the things I learned that I didn't realize is we're required to word the question a certain way, and I felt hamstrung with that. You know, I'm at the committee meeting saying, oh, we need to say this, we need to say this, we need all this information. Well, I think what Vice Chair Fiedler just shared is hopefully we'll be getting that information, because as a taxpayer, I'm going to look at the question and say, okay, if I pay this, what am I getting? What am I getting to pay this, you know? And that's what I'm searching for. That's what I was searching for. And that's looks like what we'll be getting to work with our constituents to share that. And also when we reach out to inform the voters on what they're voting on. Thank you.
Supervisor Adams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm also on the PP&J committee, and we worked really hard, as Supervisor Ramberg said, in the wording, but we also looked at the order in which we put the requirements. Mental health right now is a big issue. Youth justice, early intervention is a big issue. And of course, our troops on the forefront in the jails are a big issue. And then also the other thing that the county administrator helped us with was looking at the dollar value, trying to find something under $1 million, you know, which is a lot more palatable to voters than, you know, 3 million. So the committee is bringing you something that we really worked hard at to try to get not only approval here at this board, but to make it as palatable, reasonable to the voters as possible. Thank you.
Supervisor Carlson.
Thank you. The last referendum, I got a lot of pushback on it. They said, find it in the budget. And so in my head, I predicted that it was going to fail, just because there was almost nobody saying they wanted it. I'm not getting the feedback from this, because we did find new positions in the budget, and that satisfied people. I don't know if this one will pass or not. But I'm happy to go ahead and let the same people that voted on the last one vote on a smaller amount, more specific, and because I've been telling them I don't think we can get any more out of the budget, so we need more, and this is one way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and vote for this.
Supervisor Leith.
I was just going to mention, to echo some of these comments, that the last, some of you might be thinking, isn't this the definition of insanity to go back to another referendum? This one's different in terms of outlining specifically what the positions are, instead of the broad stroke we had last time for public safety. So I think I'm definitely in favor of this, and we've worked very hard with the Sheriff's Department and PPJ and HHS to really come up with the priorities that are really needed.
Supervisor Hanson.
Now, I don't want to preach, but I voted for the last one to put the referendum on the ballot, and then I lived up to I had the courage of my convictions, and I went out and I campaigned for it. So I'm going to ask, if you vote for this thing, to go out and have the courage of your convictions and campaign for it. And if you get pushback, ask them to vote for it anyway. Don't just kind of shy away from it. If you're getting a little bit of negative feedback, talk them into it, because we need this. Thank you.
Other comments? Supervisor Rotino?
It seems to me that we spent, what, 1.3 million for the bike path, 1.9, and I might be off on my numbers, 1.9 million for camper cabins at Glen Hills Park, and someone's going to tell me that we don't have room to find in our budget for public protection for this. I think our priorities really somewhere along the line got skewed. I will not support as a referendum going forward, but I will support the fact that we need to look as a board ways to curb some of the other spending in other departments to put forward to this, because you all know my position about the Sheriff's Office and all of the people involved here. I support them 100%. And for us to go to the voters who resoundingly defeated the last one, I think you're going to get the same exact thing. I got 22 signatures for my nomination, and at least 8 of the people that signed in my neighborhood I was canvassing complained about taxes. And if you look on your tax bill, every tax went down with the exception of the county. And I like I say, again, I will not support sending this as a referendum. We need to do our job right here. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Supervisor Counter?
A question on the makeup of this. Has there been a calculation about the financial impact at that price per 100,000, or a way that we'd be able to associate this back to the constituents as to how much is this going to cost if they do it?
It's 5 cents per $1,000 of equalized value. So if you had a $300,000 house, that'd be $15.
Supervisor Carlson?
In response to what he said, I would have liked to have not spent the money in the past and spent it on the police, but the money in the past has already been spent. If we wait till the whole next budget cycle, that's too long. So I don't see any other way to fund some more law enforcement that we need, these positions, before the next budget cycle, and try to find it somewhere else. So that money's already spent and gone.
Other comments, Supervisor Hanson?
Just wondering, wouldn't we have the authority to raise the levy without this referendum?
No. Yeah, you can raise the levy for net new construction, you can raise the levy for debt, and you can raise a levy if approved in a referendum.
Not for public protection.
Only if approved by the voters in a referendum. You can use the money that the voters approve, and you're going to use it for the reason that you state in the referendum. It's for public safety.
All right, thank you.
There was, if you're thinking, the new money that the state brought forward for us, and we'd gotten about $750,000 of new money, was required to be used for public safety, which we added a whole bunch of law enforcement positions, so we easily met that requirement. I don't know if maybe that's what you were thinking of. Yep.
Supervisor Cook?
I'll support this referendum. I think it's an important choice moving forward. I think it's also important to point out that the referendum provides us money to fund these positions on an ongoing basis, because the positions are ongoing costs, where when we reference purchases and improvements to facilities, those are really one-time funding through the capital improvement plan. So there's different pots of money that we're talking about. So the referendum is important if we want to fund these positions ongoing and not have them just in place for a year or two.
Supervisor Burning?
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the dollars that we use in the capital improvement projects. Are those monies not from leftover operating levy, cash and sales tax that have spilled over into the next year as undesignated fund balance, basically? Is that not what we use that for?
Yeah, most of the fund balance within the capital improvement project has come from two sources. One is undesignated funds in excess of our fund balance policy, which extra sales tax or departments coming in under budget, and two was ARPA dollars. So the lost revenue of our ARPA dollars, about $7 million, went into the KIP.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. And that motion passes. Okay, we're ready to move on to our next business item, resolution amending capital improvement budget for project the Highway 35 bike trail. Do we have a motion for this resolution? Supervisor Hanson, do we have a second? Supervisor Counter. Supervisor Hanson, would you like to give us a background, please?
Sure. The project came up as part of a three-phase project to put a bike trail between the Loop Trail and down to Willow River State Park. This phase, when the bids were let, the price went up. Construction costs went up. Our grant didn't cover our expected costs, and we have a shortfall. And we're coming to the county board to ask for an additional $335,877 out of the capital improvement budget. The reason that I think that this is a very important thing to do is that this is a one-time opportunity. This period of time, this grant, we've already put $95,000 into doing the engineering work for this. We will have to pay this grant money back. We'll lose the $95,000. We won't be able to go back and do this. This is like you've got a piece of steel in the forge, it's cherry red, you need to hit it and continue to make whatever it is that you're pounding out. If it's horseshoes, you've got to get the animal shoed and continue to do your job. This is an economic development situation. When we have finished Eckerd Blufflands Park, we're going to have a jewel, a series of parks with Willow River State Park, Eckerd Bluffland Park, that will be, and this is going to take a long time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, this year, next year, the next 10 years maybe, but developing this trail is something that's going to lead people from the Loop Trail from Stillwater, Minnesota, down to our new park and into Willow River State Park. Right now, if you come across the river from Stillwater, you've got all of the opportunities to spend money in Stillwater. What do you have in Wisconsin? You've got a liquor store, a feedlot, and an adult entertainment establishment, and that's all the businesses that you see when you come across. Right now, what I'd like to see is some economic development so that when you come across, you've got a trail that leads down into St. Joseph where you have businesses that are willing and happy to serve you some entertainment. And that's what will happen when we get this trail going. You're going to have opportunities to go down to North Hudson and into Hudson. And with people riding these electric bicycles, there's a greater range for people to enjoy the trails and enjoy the hospitality that we offer. Right now is the time to build this trail. Right now is the moment in time that we have the opportunity and the funding. The money's in the capital improvement fund. We have the budget. I don't think that we're hurting our opportunities to fund any other department by taking this chance to do economic development and tourism. Economic development and tourism is a necessary role that the county plays. So please support this opportunity for the future of tourism, economic development, and development. It helps real estate values. It helps St. Croix County be the jewel that it needs to be as we grow into the next several decades.
Comments? Supervisor Anderson?
I also just want to add that this won't be a repeated issue going forward. In future grants, we're allowed to modify for future parts of the trail to include inflation based on these numbers and also an inflation number on top of that. So it's not just, this is kind of like a one-time deal. Obviously, 20%, or the match that county does will be more, but it's not going to be us paying for over half of it on the next parts of the trail.
Supervisor Carlson.
Just to be clear, is this the final phase? Because it talked about phases. So what are the other two phases? I'm a little unclear, I guess.
We're gonna have the director come up and talk about the 3 phases.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody, members of the board. So what you're deciding on tonight is for phase 1 of the trail, which goes from the northern limits of the village of Hudson up to Old Highway 35, or the future park, as Supervisor Hanson mentioned. The county has experienced a lot of bad timing in that with this project. So we also had our bid opening for this phase 1 project on November 2nd. Normally, our TAP grant application has to be submitted by the end of January, so that would be the end of January of '24. But the state moved up that application process to the end of October. And so in October, we made the call that we were going to apply for phase 2, which is the blue line up there, which goes from Old 35, or the end of phase 1 here, up to Willow River State Park. And the original estimate that we had worked on with Highway was right around $660,000. And as we talked about last month, and that we were able to adjust those numbers, and that to basically reflect our bid numbers that we got on November 2nd, plus then we built in 2027 construction cost and also some contingency, and that to hopefully avoid any shortfalls or any shortcomings, and that on phase 2 of the project. Phase 3 of the project has not been put into motion yet as far as any kind of grant dollars that we might be able to do. That's quite a ways off in the future, but right now we're looking at phase 1, and the DOT is probably going to have a harder time funding phase 2 of the project if phase 1 doesn't go forward, just because it's going to be a trail in the middle of the whole plan. So this whole Highway 35 trail project was identified by the county in their 2017 bike and ped plan as well. So that's where staff sought out funds to take and comply with the plan. That's what got the whole ball going and that towards this road.
Thank you, Jason. Supervisor Barklow.
Just quick questions. Paved surface, asphalt, I'm assuming, right?
Yep, and that, so, yep, it'd be 10-foot wide paved.
How long do we expect it to last?
It's anybody's guess in that. I'm
20
sure there'll
years.
be some maintenance in that eventually, but there's a lot of trails in that similar that
Sure.
have lasted pretty well because they're not seeing the heavy truck traffic and stuff like our roads might.
You know, like the Browns Creek Trail or Gateway Trail. Yeah, I don't know where those funds come from. Maybe they're state dollars, but do we want to have anything like a user fee attached to it to maintain the trail long term? So.
I'm not sure, but I don't, we might be limited if we can charge a fee to use the trail based on the TAP grant.
Yeah, it's not a large trail,
but there is grant opportunities, and that for grant maintenance and stuff that we could seek through, and that the DNR coming up in future years. And those grants are a lot easier to get for maintenance rather than construction of new trails.
Okay. Thank you.
The question, Supervisor Otino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all this economic boom is expected, can somebody tell me how many bicycle riders actually ride that path across the bridge existing now in the 5 months of summer that we get? Is there a number that you can put on that?
I don't have that information.
How often do you go over there? There's.
Oh, I see bicycles.
You see them all the time. I haven't been able to.
But I don't have a number.
Right, I don't have a number. Right, I get it. It's not just 5 months. They're out there, unless it's during a snowstorm.
Point of order,
they're out
Mr.
there
Chair.
all the time.
Yes, I know. Supervisor Hanson,
I apologize. I
can you
stand
please
corrected.
request the floor? Okay, Supervisor Shirley.
Okay, here's my issue. We just got done voting for the public, to ask the public for more money. Now, I know we just talked about this in a meeting before. We passed this through, but now after that vote, my concern is the dollar amount. It always has been, but I will support this moving forward if the money that we moved to ARPA for the building, for HVAC, if we get reimbursed that from the building funds back into ARPA and we reuse part of that for this, I'll support this.
It wouldn't be eligible to do what you're asking because the ARPA dollars have to be used for a specific purpose. Now, we did move $7 million of ARPA funds into the KIP, which the balance that's in the KIP is actually from the ARPA dollars. If that makes you feel any better. No.
Where I was getting at this, I should have expanded, I guess, was that now that we moved, was it 400,000? Is what we're expecting from the remaining ARPA funds over to there. We have the interest from the building. We have the original 80 million. So we're at 82.4 roughly for the building project here. And that ARPA money that was moved in there, that's eligible for the HVAC costs. What I'm asking is that instead of that being designated, move that ARPA money there, but reimburse the KIP back out of the building project so that we can use that money for this.
Oh, yeah, that we could do. That's a shell game. But the 400,000 hasn't been moved to the building project yet. So what we said was any funds that were unused from all of the ARPA projects at the end of 2024, so 12 months or 11 months from now, I'm going to take a look at all the books, and whatever's left over, I'm going to make a journal entry, expend it to the HVAC so that every dollar of the ARPA is used up. So there'll be a dollar amount that's used there. I don't know what that will be, though, until December. So it may be 400,000, it may be zero, but it'll be something. But that's the accounting methodology I'm using to make sure that we use all of the federal money. But yes, the bond proceeds can be used for any capital improvement project that the county board approves.
Supervisor Burning?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I remember it was 1 or 2 meetings ago, and I can't remember if it was admin or this body. We asked what it would be if we didn't blacktop it, if we just did gravel or dirt even. And then I believe, it might even have been me, that asked how we can engage, just like the snowmobilers engage their clubs to maintain trails, markings, make sure that it's laid out safely. Our bike and ped groups, there's 4 really strong ones between both sides of the river, very active, almost like an adopt a highway type deal. I think it would behoove us to explore that if I was to support this. But did we ever engage them at all?
I did. I asked around to a few of them, and that the answers I got, whether or not they're correct or not, was that they get grants for like $10,000, and that for a specific project, not big money or not big contributions from businesses and stuff in the area.
Yeah. So I guess maybe re-engage them, if I may ask, and Mr. Chair, if you're okay with this, maybe re-engage them in a different approach, that we're not looking necessarily for them to try to get grant money to just, only to fix it, but we're looking for volunteers to help maintain it. The snowmobile trailer, trail associations go out and they take care of all that stuff. And I think it's only justified if we ask the same of bicycle groups, because I mean, and this is coming from an avid bicyclist. Most people don't know that. I haven't in the last 17 years with 4 kids, but I think it's important to have this kind of stuff available, but I think it's just as important for us to make sure that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And in this situation, I would support it if we can get commitment out of those groups to engage in that side just the same as the snowmobile trails. If that makes sense, if what I'm saying makes sense, I don't know. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And that it does. And from ones I talked to, and that it seemed like that side of it was much easier to get support from
Yes.
those groups, more than the financial side of actual funding it up front and that. So
Yeah, I think we should maybe talk or have some people from different snowmobile trail associations and people that take care of it, and kind of maybe we should engage them as a board and find out what exactly they do to maintain their trails and groom them and make them ready for riding and marking them and keeping them safe, because I don't remember a lot of county dollars going towards stuff like that. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks. Appreciate it. And I can support this if we, Supervisor Shirley, what he had said, I like that. I like engaging the bike and ped groups. I don't know, I like it, but let's make it good for everyone.
Supervisor Hanson?
If you don't mind, I'm going to address what Supervisor Burning said, and this is excellent what you're saying. We had a representative from the St. Croix Bicycle and Pedestrian Coalition at our last committee meeting, and they come to a lot of our committee meetings, and they're engaged with us, and we have never asked them for help with maintenance, but I think they'd probably be receptive to that, and I think it's a great idea. So possibly even discussing a Friends of St. Croix Trails. They're wonderful people, and we have a good relationship with them. We have for years. So it's a great suggestion, and thanks for bringing it up in public. And that's all I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
So I would like to have something in here, and so I'm going to look over at Corp Counsel. Don't bug Corp Counsel there, Mr. Administrator. I want something in here that requires engagement of that and to have a follow through, and not just that it doesn't come to fruition, because I don't want to expend all this money and then, it comes to the point where we're stuck holding the bag on everything. So what I've said for 6 or 7 minutes, and I'm sorry to take up everyone's time on this, but I think it's important. How would I put into words as a motion what I'm looking to accomplish, I guess?
When we need an amendment?
Are we even? Yeah, we are. Yeah, we would. That's what I'm trying to do, is an amendment.
You need a motion to amend, correct?
I think that's what I'm looking for.
I think you have 2 options. Administrator Witt, you could ask for a future agenda item to create a group or send it back to committee to establish some type of, Friends of the trail group, or you can also make an amendment to the resolution, now therefore be it further resolved that St. Croix County shall, and then you add to the rest of that.
Okay. Wow. Give me a moment to think about what that would look like, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
It's up to you to make the motion or the amendment. Supervisor Hanson?
Supervisor Burning, I'd like to emphasize with you the timeliness of this. We're running out of time on this grant. We already have an excellent relationship with the bike ped group, and we can probably build on that. I'd also like to emphasize that we can't bind a future county board, nor can we bind an organization to work on something, even if they agree, yep, we'll do that. And once we make a commitment of funds, we can't withdraw that. So once we make this decision to go forward with construction, if a non-governmental agency says, well, we decided not to pick up trash, we can't go back and take our $300,000 back and stop an engineering company. So I'm not sure how that looks.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Burnham?
I'm trying not to invoke this here, but okay, so I understand that we can't engage future, the future for non-governmental bodies to engage in a certain way. But I do think that we would be able to exercise the right that if the trails weren't maintained, we could close them as the county. I mean, that is the possibility if they're not maintained or upgraded or repaired by anybody. So my motion would be to ensure that we are, as a body, engaging as a community development department, engaging our bike and ped groups to form their own Friends of the Bike Trails type of organization to support the trails. That's
So
my motion. That's a motion.
That's a motion. Do we have a second? It does not appear we have a second. So we're back to the original motion. I'd like to suggest that it appears that the Community Development Department has made a good effort to engage local clubs and organizations, and that seems to be clear. How far we could go past that, I don't know. Supervisor Shirley?
I would like to make a motion that we move this forward and add a line in there that we will take the funding from this, from the interest of the government building to pay for this, and an extra line in there to talk about how, as a community development, under the Community Development Committee, we could engage local bike clubs in order to further discuss how they could be involved.
There was a motion to amend, correct? And do we have a second, Supervisor Burning? So can we clarify the motion to amend, please?
I can probably clarify, explain what the impact is of that. So what we would do is the dollar amount, the $335,000 dollar amount, we would not take it from the KIP fund balance. Supervisor Shirley has changed where it comes from. Instead, it would come from the government center construction project. So right now we have about $3 million of contingency on that project for things that come up during the project. It would reduce that contingency amount that's currently available.
Supervisor Otino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask how much money any of the local groups you're talking to have put forward to date? And it's a good question. We're talking about people maintaining the trail, which they have absolutely no ability to do. And we're counting on money coming forward from that group. How much money have they given us so far for the trail system or maintenance of that trail system? That's a fair question.
I think that's, Jason, can you help us out with that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any funds that we've received for trail development or maintenance. I know that there's been talks about the snowmobile clubs, and the clubs get grant dollars through the DNR, and that from the passes and that from the machines, and then we act as like a middleman, and we relay those funds back out to the club. So that's where they've got a lot of volunteer funding, or volunteer time or funding in that to take and support the county's trail systems. I think that us as community development, I reached out talking about funding opportunities, and there wasn't a lot of funding available, but there may be, staff or available time where they can go out and pick up garbage and stuff and do what they can along the trail. Make sure signs are in good shape. That kind of stuff is where I'd see that they would be able to help with maintenance.
Other questions, comments? Supervisor Cook?
I think that we should be moving forward with the original resolution here. I'm a little concerned about the amendment in that we can, as we've already discussed, we can't bind non-county entities to participate with us. And since we have a relationship, it sounds like, per Supervisor Hanson and others, I think that we should continue to move forward with that relationship without putting words on there that don't really bind us anyway. It just seems like it might negatively impact the relationship. And also, when it comes to the budget, I would prefer to leave the exact counting of the budget to the county administrator as he moves through the process. It sounds like, and Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the way that you were already talking about moving funding around, it's just, we're basically, the amendment's going to ask you to be moving funds back and forth, but really, ultimately, at the end of the year, you have a process, you have a method that you use for accounting, and this just doesn't really make much of a difference. It's not raising taxes one way or the other. It's not impacting any bottom line. It's just kind of us meddling in your budgeting process. That's how I see it. No disrespect, but that's why we hire you to do that kind of detailed accounting for us.
Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to meddle, you guys are allowed to. It's just, it would move the funds out of the government center project. If that project falls short, we're going to be back in front of you saying, we need additional funds now to finish the government center project. So you may just be pushing it down the road. You may still end up in the exact same situation that you're going to take it from the KIP fund balance to finish the government center project then if you start pulling the funds out to spend it on something else.
Supervisor Shirley?
Talking about the bike groups, I think maybe we should word it as nurture a Friends of the Trail group relationship and just leave it at that in there for now. To comment on the funds from the building, we already are through the north side. The south side remodels and not the remodels, but the tying into the new addition to the south, we're through a lot of the portion where we'd find issues with things in there that our contingency isn't needed as much as it was before. So a lot of those things have been found already, or would have been found, that would have required more funding for issues that came up. So we do still have a contingency on the building. We still have the interest income from the bond. So I'm not concerned that we're going to run out of money that we're going to have to later come and fund to finish the project.
Yeah, I might call Taylor up just to talk about the contingency and what that might be used for in the future. He can give us his expert guidance. I know he always likes a little FaceTime at county board meetings, talking in front of large groups. It's one of his favorite things.
I believe the contingency money would be mostly used in this building. This is where we're going to find more of the issues, because that's new development. I mean, we already know what we're going to run into. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, is there any other discussion? I think we're ready to vote on the amendment. Can we clarify exactly what we're voting on in the amendment? Thank you, Heather.
Yes, I think I can. I think we would be amending line 22 to indicate that instead of the funds coming from the KIP budget, it would come out of the government center construction project. And then can have another therefore clause that states, now therefore be it resolved that St. Croix County shall engage with bike and ped groups to support maintenance efforts on the trail. So it basically ties the county to engage, not that the bike ped plan has to agree to do something.
Would I be correct in saying this is a majority vote?
Correct.
Okay.
For this amendment.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry. Supervisor Hanson.
I think Supervisor Shirley recommended the use of the word nurture the relationship with the bike ped group.
Nurture instead of engage?
Yep. it suggests the ongoing existing relationship.
Do you want me to read it again? Now therefore be it resolved that St. Croix County shall nurture the relationship with bike and ped groups to support maintenance efforts on the trail.
Okay, is everybody clear on the amendment that we're voting on? Supervisor Hanson?
This is really just a continuation of what I was saying a moment ago. I wanted to say that I was going to support this because if it brings a couple of supervisors along who are on the fence, I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Supervisor Otino.
I just want to make sure I'm sure, because with that added line, that we are going to support $475,000, so $500,000. And am I correct? This length of the piece of the trail is 1 point something miles. Am I right? Can I ask that question?
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's because this is, I don't think that's appropriate for this amendment. It'd be for the.
Well,
yeah, we're at this
line of the $475,000.
I just want to clarify. Right now, we're just only voting on the amendment to the resolution. So we're not voting to approve the resolution. Okay. We're voting to amend the resolution.
I made the mistake then that because basically, if we're amending line 22, that's the part of line 22 is showing the net cost of the $475,000. So I thought it was a valid question.
Right, well, we're amending where it's being funded, how it's being funded, as opposed to the dollar amount.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we could still answer Supervisor Otino's question. If it helps clarify for him where the funding's coming from?
It's 0.73 miles. Sorry? 0.73 miles. Even smaller than I thought. We're at there's quite a bit of curb and gutter and concrete, flat work and that engaged in this part of the project because of its area compared to when we get more remote, that we probably won't have as much.
Okay, we clear up what we're voting on, the amendment to the resolution. So that amendment passes. So now we're back to the original resolution as amended. Other comments or discussion? Supervisor Counter.
One of the things that we talked about during our discussion on this is, this is a timely issue that has to be done, or we lose out on the opportunity for the grants. But one of the other things that we have to look at is there would be the loss of the $90,000 if we don't do this. Now, if we move on and we don't do this, then kick the can down the road a ways and look at what phase 1 and phase 2 would mean for the future. The particular gateway where this trail is going is in an area of St. Croix County that has a lot of potential high development pressure. And if this goes down for a long period without doing it, chances are this is going to become much more costly in the future, because as that properties become developed along where the trail corridor is, it could mean additional costs for purchasing of construction right-of-ways and additional things from residences that are not in existence there right now, that we could see that in the not-so-distant future. So this kind of project is a little bit different than something that would be like in an area of the county where there is real low development pressure, where those costs wouldn't necessarily be incurred if it was deferred. So just food for thought on that.
Other comments or discussion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this, and this is, the motion is to approve the resolution as amended.
Supervisor Counter, I think you were the second on that motion. If you could put your second back in.
And this will require a 2/3 vote, just so you know. Okay, that resolution passes. Thank you. That was great discussion. We're going to move on to business item number 4, resolution adopting the updated wage grid. Do we have a motion? Supervisor Cook, second. Supervisor Counter. Supervisor Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is a resolution that basically is an outcome of a classification and compensation plan update we had through the McGrath Resources Group. I will defer to either our HR director or administrator for any specific detail if you have questions, but essentially the intent of the study really was to partially look at conducting an external study and seeing how St. Croix County fares in relation to other municipalities. And really the goal here is to make sure that we can still attract employees and also retain employees. So there were adjustments made to the wage grid. An important piece of this is that there was already funds set aside for this, so there's no budget amendment required. The money, Administrator Witt has already put the money aside for the increase in the wage grid. And really the goal here is to hopefully retain and attract employees as we need them to provide the services of the county.
Any discussion? Anyone like to add to that? Supervisor Burning.
We have a first and a second, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So I apologize for missing the last committee meeting. I wanted to bring this up at that point in time, but it really seems as if just about every county board meeting and every administration meeting, we are changing and amending and constantly moving this scale around. And I'm just wondering, are we still doing the right thing if these types of issues are being brought before us just about? I mean, maybe my perception is wrong, but I feel like we are changing a classification, changing how many steps you can go, what a number is, just about every county board meeting. So I think we should take a look at this as a whole at some point in time. That's just my 2 cents on this issue. I'm going to vote for it after reading through it in the packet, but that's just, my 2 cents, which is probably cost a dime now. But anyway.
I don't know if Audrey would care to respond to that, or if you have any comments, we'd certainly appreciate it.
I will say we do a lot of reclassifications, some regrades. The reclassifications are really just position focused versus where the positions, how that impacts the entire, what our wage structure looks like. I don't think that it really impacts that, which is what we're kind of looking at, right, is creating that new wage grid structure, whereas classifications just look at individual positions and how those positions have changed some of the job details and job duties that individual has been doing, and then classifying them within the wage structure that we have in place. So you're right, there's a lot of changes that we make, but it doesn't really change the structure of our current grid system.
Supervisor Fiedler?
At the last admin meeting that Supervisor Burning missed, I brought up something similar to this. Not exactly the same thing, and the way we left it was that the admin director and Ken would come back to us at the admin committee sometime in the early spring with some ideas as to how we might really thoughtfully review all these things. And so it's an ongoing issue that I think they're working on now, and it'll come back to us probably in January or February is my guess, Supervisor Burning.
Supervisor Hanson?
I respect the committee system very much, and I respect the work that our administration committee does. But I will also add that I've been on the county board now for 10 years, and I've seen the cycle of reviewing our wage grid, and it costs a tremendous amount of money to bring in a consultant. We had a consultant agency by the name of McGrath that came in and looked at every single thing. Tim was a department head at that time, ran the transportation department, and they really did talk to many, maybe all of the employees of the county, and it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And by the time they were done, because the whole wage grid is a dynamic process, new people have been hired, it needed to be done again, if you paid attention to it. And at that time, I'm not related to anybody who works for the county at this time, but at that time I was related to somebody who worked for the county, and I was listening very closely to what was happening with employees, and they felt in a large sense that mid-level supervisors just felt that the whole thing was a waste of time because there was still wage compression. So I guess what I'm saying is we should trust our department heads and our administrator and our human resource director to do their jobs, and they should be able to respond to market demands and the pressures from within the county and bring to you their very best recommendations, and we should trust them to do their jobs.
Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we're ready to vote on this. I'm sorry? Second was, yeah, Supervisor Counter. Thank you. And that passes. Thank you. Let's move on to the next business item, number 5, resolution providing additional step increases for healthcare campus nursing staff. Supervisor Cook, do we have a second? Supervisor Osnes. Would you like to start us out, Supervisor Cook?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to talk more about wage grids now, even though we just talked about them. But this resolution basically comes out of a request to increase the wages for some of our nursing staff at the healthcare campus. This is more from a retention standpoint. These are nurses and employees that have a significant amount of experience. It's my understanding that the healthcare campus, they're using a lot of contract staff right now. The goal here really would be, if we approve this resolution and the increase in wages, that would help retain them and ultimately save the county money in contract staff long term.
Supervisor Hanson?
So this is an enterprise fund, is that correct? Could you explain how that works?
Yeah, an enterprise fund means that it's run like a business, sort of on the side of the books. So the revenues and expenses stay within that. Our nursing home covers all of their operating expenses. They don't cover the debt service of the nursing home. I'll throw that disclaimer out there. So with this increase in costs, it'll be covered from the revenues. There was a Medicaid increase this year, and so that increase should more than offset this. And really, it should offset it through the savings. If we can get off of the contracted staffing, we should save money. If you remember, we came back for CNAs probably 4 to 6 months ago. Time flies. But we were at $400,000 of contract services at the time. We got that down to about 200-some thousand. But these LPN, RN positions are still what's being contract serviced out. So again, change, if we can get our compensation up and more competitive, then we can get rid of that contract staffing, which will save us money.
Other comments, questions? Supervisor Lind.
So if we get rid of if we increase this wage, do we then limit the pool that we are allowed to use? because the pool staff, you get a different kind of a scheduling. You can plan your vacations, you can do a lot of things. It creates a lot of freedom for the employee that's going through a pool. If we go ahead and up this wage to become competitive or more competitive, do we then limit the ability to use the pool and say, you know what, we hire on or something?
Yeah, we have, and I'll use the CNAs as an example because I'm a little bit more familiar with that. The CNAs, we have a pool of flex people that come on and work different shifts. They're a 0 FTE, but we call them in to work different shifts. I don't know if we do that so much with the LPNs or RNs, but the reason we're using contract staff is just because we haven't added an LPN since 2022. So we're not filling the full-time positions we have authorized. If we could fill those, we would cut back on the contract staff.
So they're willing to hire on these employees that we're...
The contract staff currently?
The contract staff currently.
You know, I don't know that, but we've already increased the wage offering through the last agenda item. We've increased the wages for those staff to bring them on. So the recruitment part's already been done.
Okay.
This piece here is adjusting, you know, less than a dozen staff for retention purposes. Because people that have worked for the county for 15 years are going to be down in the bottom 3 steps. So we want to bring them up a little bit so the people that we bring in are slightly below that.
Other questions, discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. And that's approved unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll get to our last business item, resolution amending personnel policy, compensation classification. Supervisor Cook, motion. We have a second. Supervisor Counter. Supervisor Cook?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, this is a kind of a wording change that's, my understanding, is required in order for us to be in compliance as an employer for FLSA rules. And I would maybe look to the HR director or the administrator or maybe our attorney to talk about what the impact would be. But basically, we're changing some language that allows us to comply with regulations related to overtime and deductions and procedures. I don't know. Audrey, you can probably explain it a lot better than me.
So we're already following the correct practices. Basically, under FLSA, you can have non-exempt and exempt employees. In order to keep exempt status, you can only deduct wages according to FLSA regulations. So whether that's half day, you can't just take an hour here or an hour there because they're salaried employees versus hourly employees. So we need to, it was basically brought up by an employment attorney that we should have the language specified in our policy on what can be taken away as wages from exempt employees, and that we need that in there so that when we do make those deductions from an exempt salary employee, that we are following policy and we can prove to the FLSA that we are following that policy. If we don't have that language in there and we can't prove that we've done it per policy, they can actually take that status away from us so that we can no longer classify employees as exempt. And that would be not great for the county.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's vote. Thank you. That was approved unanimously. Thank you, Audrey. Okay, now we're done with our business items, ready for our sole annual report. That'll be Phil Golly of Justice Services. Phil, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening. So Justice Support is for roughly 2.5 years. 3 different areas that we oversee. So there's the Adult Treatment Court, There is the pretrial division that if you look back from 2017 to 2021, that was run by the Sheriff's Department. It's now a civilian model. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then our Community Justice Collaborating Council, our CJCC, which brings together stakeholders from across the county and the justice system, medical field, faith-based community. And that's just really myself, and Judge Needham is in charge of that. So some updates from this year. We, back in the spring, we added a drug tester. We call it a substance screener. That position was previously contracted. That person is now a full-time county employee, which is wonderful, especially since we're getting set to open up our second testing location in New Richmond here in the next couple months. So that's going really well. Another huge update for us is we started running the MRT group, the Moral Recognition Therapy, which is changing thinking errors. So previously that fell under the direction of the Behavioral Health Department. Previous to that, it was in the diversion program. So we've been running that for about the last year. We have a contract with the Department of Corrections, so we're able to bill for that, which is really nice. And we provide a really nice service on Wednesday evenings for folks. We also have a data entry specialist that is shared very part-time, 12 hours a week with our treatment court, 12 hours a week with our diversion program. That's part of our ongoing TAD grant, the Treatment Alternatives and Diversion Grant. She's also been with us for about a year. And then the last update to the department, one of the last updates, is we have a peer support specialist that is now working with mainly our treatment court. There's a grant that was actually written by the Behavioral Health Department. That person is embedded in our treatment court. Really helps to kind of walk with the participants as they're navigating life, being sober, helping out, driving them to support group meetings, doing things that our staff can't do, just don't have the time. So it provides a really nice service, and it's grant funded, so that's really nice. Speaking of our TAD grant, we just, Chair Long just signed the 2024 TAD grant, so we were awarded that again. This is year 3 of 5. So the TAD grant, again, Treatment Alternatives and Diversion, funds partially our treatment court as well as the diversion program in the district attorney's office. We were awarded same amount as 2023, so roughly $180,000 from the state, and then the county provides a 25% cash match, which is pretty standard. So it's roughly $240,000 for 2024. So really happy about that. In justice support, our numbers have increased substantially. We, through September 30th, so for the first 3 quarters of 2023, we've served about 650 individuals. Now, to provide some context to that, that same time period last year, we had provided services, monitoring, drug testing, those types of things, to 270 individuals. So that number has doubled. I would note that one of the reasons why we've seen that is because some of the judges are now ordering monitoring, or what we might see as like a form of supervision. I try to stay away from that term supervision because these folks are pre-trial, so they are presumed innocent, but they check in with us weekly, monthly, and we provide them with whatever services they need. So that's been a really big and important kind of change for us as we rebrand ourselves to this civilian model. It's no longer just drug testing. That's certainly a very big part of what we do. We provide GPS service, we provide alcohol monitoring, but the supportive services, or what we might refer to as case management, that is what we know is evidence-based to help people change. We're doing more of that at a really high clip, and that I think is going to support some of the numbers that I'm going to talk about here. So again, through the first 3 quarters of 2023, about 93% of the folks on pretrial are coming to court. That's a really, really great number. That number is up from 87% last year. So people are coming back to court. That's a really good thing. That's what the judges want. That's what the court system wants. That means fewer warrants. That means less work for law enforcement having to be in the community arresting folks. And it moves their cases along quicker. That's, I think, everyone enjoys and benefits from that. Some other important statistics. roughly 92% of our people on pretrial are remaining crime-free. So they're getting in trouble, unfortunately, but they're not committing new crimes while they're on bond. That's another metric that we use to look at success, if you want to call it that. But it's another way that we can measure what we're doing is working. And then about 99.3% of our folks are remaining violent crime-free. So they're not going out and committing violent crimes, which is, again, it speaks to, I think, public safety in the community. Those numbers, like last year, are well above the national averages. The most recent number I have is close to a decade old, but they fit. Across the country, 83% of people come to court. We're enjoying, 93%. So we're doing really well there. And then the rearrest rate nationally is about 80%, and we're about 92. So we're doing well. And again, that's credit to everyone in the justice system. So law enforcement, what we do, what the court system does, and what the jail does. One of the other projects that we've undertaken this year is a system mapping project that our supervisor in pretrial has undergone to kind of look at how individuals make their way through the justice system from arrest to their case being adjudicated or disposed of, and those different phases. So I think that's been pretty eye-opening. I want to thank judges, DA, public defender, probation, a lot of folks in the justice system. We asked for a lot of their time, and they were really willing to help us out, so we appreciate that. I think that has really helped us identify gaps and voids in the system. Not that we have many of them, but areas that we can improve upon, I think, is really how we look at that. As we get into 24 and beyond, some goals that I've outlined for us, a project that we're currently working on with behavioral health, with the jail. We spend a lot of time collaborating in justice support with those two departments. I'm not sure if you all are aware, but oftentimes when people go to jail, they lose access to their health insurance. Because of that, we have to find a way to oftentimes find substance use assessments for them and get them assessed for their needs. Well, without health insurance, that creates challenges not only for them, but for the system. So we're working on partnerships, again, with behavioral health, with Western Wisconsin Health to see how we can serve those individuals in the jail. We have some funding currently through a grant, at least for the next 9 or 10 months, that will allow us to pay for those, which is great. We don't have the personnel right now to do those assessments. So I'm hopeful here soon we can have somebody that can come in and do those. So that's an ongoing project. One thing that we've been fairly intentional about in justice support, and we did a nice job of this in 2023, is recouping some of the funds that we put out, especially for drug testing, GPS, remote breath. Those services that we provide are very, very expensive. And we've done a great job with the court of determining who's appropriate and how long they're on each of those services. So we've developed a policy where we step people down if they remain compliant for so long. I want us to continue to do that because it's fiscally responsible to do that, and it's most appropriate for the person, because we definitely can over-monitor individuals, and that can actually create more issues for them. If we continue to supervise them at a high rate for a low-risk individual, it could throw them into a tailspin. So we continue to work towards that. And then just continued collaboration. We're having discussions right now in justice support about continuity of services. So drug testing is a big thing that we do. Currently, we drug test for pretrial, treatment court, diversion, and we've started in the last probably 6 to 8 months taking on CPS cases, family cases, and we're going to, actually effective today, we're taking on more of those, and I think there's room for us to continue to improve, consolidate resources, save county money, and then folks that work in the system, folks that use our resources, they know what to expect when they come or they're asked to drug test from the court. Speaking of drug testing, Gesundheit, we are, as I had mentioned, expanding our drug testing services to New Richmond. So there is a construction project that's ongoing. I think we're getting close. Here in the next couple of months, we'll be offering drug testing for the population of justice-involved individuals in the county that live in that part of St. Croix, which is about 50%. So we'll be excited to start that. And so, again, a lot of the folks that are justice involved have issues with transportation, reliable transportation. So instead of having to come to Hudson, they can go to New Richmond. So we're looking forward to that. We changed our treatment court provider back in March of this year. Programs for Change out of Hudson Hospital is our current provider. So we have a nice partnership with them. I didn't get a chance to mention that last year, but we have developed that partnership. Last couple things I want to talk about statistically are, and this unfortunately I don't think will come as a surprise to anyone. I'm sure that Sheriff Knutson and others can attest to this, is the increase in fentanyl that we're seeing in our drug test results. If we look at our third quarter for 2023, we saw 45 people test positive for fentanyl at the Justice Support Center. Again, that number's triple from the previous quarter. And when we talk to these folks, anecdotally, we ask them, did you know that this was part of the product you were taking? And they did not know that. So they're ingesting drugs that they thought were something else that were also containing fentanyl. So I think it's just something we need to continue to keep an eye on. Unfortunately, I know we're seeing this trend across the country. And I'm sure that the medical examiner could probably speak to that as well. And I can take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Phil. Supervisor Ramberg.
Yeah, just for clarification, what is ETG in one of the charts?
That's alcohol. Good question.
Other questions? Supervisor Fiedler.
Just a quick observation, not really a question, although if the question comes out of it, I'll let Dr. Ghaly answer it. Dr. Ghaly appears before the PPJ monthly with his staff. We have a chance to go through a lot of this in detail, but I would just observe that over the last couple of years since they came into existence, we've seen a good relationship with HHS and behavioral health go from good to even better. And that's really good, that there's that coordination between those two entities. Dr. Ghaly kind of skipped over CJCC, said that's one of his duties. Well, that's a huge duty. The CJCC is a big deal. It's got about 20 representatives ranging everywhere from the district attorney to our HHS director to our county administrator to our chairman, who also sits on their executive committee, and 20 other people from the community who are deeply involved in the justice delivery system. It's huge. I know Supervisor Leaf sits on, is it Juvenile Justice Subcommittee, and she's been doing great work on that. As I mentioned, the chairman is on the executive committee. I'm on the criminal justice committee. And boy, it's a lot of work. I mean, we meet every other month officially, but unofficially we talk all the time about these issues, and they go, and then we get reports back to PPJ, and we're able to filter that down into something that might be appropriate for discussion before the board. I'll just close by saying Phil is also engaged in something we asked him at PPJ to do. He didn't mention it really, and that's a big statistical project to help us for the first time ever bring together all the critical data in the justice system in one place. And it can't be done overnight, but Phil is working hard on that, and he's going to be reporting to the PPJ on his results and improving it as we go along. The last thing I would note, he mentioned fentanyl, and I don't have the precise number, but I saw a report just the other day that in the United States, as you said, fentanyl is just killing a lot of young people. The last number I saw was over 80,000 people a year, just from fentanyl, let alone the other opiates, which are killing another 30 or 40,000 people. So it's a big deal, and it's really come to St. Croix County. We didn't have this a year ago. It really didn't appear on our radar, and now it's huge, and people are dying. But thank you, Dr. Ghaly. We appreciate your comments to the PPJ and to us today.
Other questions or comments? Supervisor Leaf?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for all the work you do and your team, and this is great.
Supervisor Otino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All of the stuff that we've gone forward, I think the whole entire board is seeing that there's good benefit there. You referred to the additional drug testing in New Richmond. The board authorized $50,000 for that. I believe it's a half-time position. And now you say you have some maintenance going on to the building for that position. Can you explain that?
Sure, yeah, good question. So construction was needed in the space of New Richmond to outfit it for our testing space, roughly $20,000. Then the additional monies will take the person that currently, was 24 hours a week to 36 hours a week, and that adds benefits to her as well. So those monies were partly for the construction, partly for the position.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying that, and it's money well spent. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Gowling. Okay, request for future agenda items. There was a request from Supervisor Lind, and that has been forwarded to the Administration Committee for consideration.
Perfect. Do you want me to do more than that?
What's that? What's that?
Do you want her to actually ask for it?
I don't.
We're good.
Okay. We're going to look at that this month. Okay, any other agenda requests? Okay, seeing none, county clerk's report. Oh, sorry.
Does that include announcements?
No, I'm not there yet.
Oh, you're not there. I'm sorry.
County clerk's report. Okay, announcements. I just want to mention that I will be on my annual winter road trip for the month of February. So our February board meeting will be handled very aptly by our vice chair, and I'm sure he'll run through that very quickly for you. Supervisor Burning.
So in 2020, both Supervisor Cook and I were elected to this board, and 2 terms I had the honor of serving with her. She's the only one in our group that put her declaration of non-candidacy. And I got to say that although if you take the partisan side of things out of it, and Supervisor Cook has been such a, for us to be able to pull partisanship out of this with this group has been awesome, and Supervisor Cook has been a catalyst for that. And it would be remiss for me to not mention her, that she's got only three more meetings left with us, and it is going to be a vacuum. So thank you for your balance, your perspective, and you're going to be missed on this board. So thank you for your service. You represent your district very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Burning.
Okay, with that.
Announcements.
Oh, Supervisor Fiedler.
Just very quickly under announcements, and maybe I should have raised this under future agenda items, I'm not sure. But I'll just point out that Supervisor Osnes and Supervisor Leaf and I joined the First Circuit Court on Friday to observe them for a couple of hours on something very creative that they're doing, a pilot project called Restitution Court, where effectively a person in a criminal setting has been, as part of their sentence, they must provide restitution to their victim. And Judge Nordstrom has really taken it on, and for the last year he's been perfecting it, and he's really gotten it down to a pretty good level. There are a few issues with data that he's working with the Department of Corrections on, and some other issues to make it even better. But it brings a lot of money back to St. Croix County that should be here, and it also results in restitution for victims, which is very much needed. And so at some point in the near future, our committee will be talking about this, and we may be coming back to the full committee with a very general resolution to support that restitution court concept, not with any details, but just wanted to raise that for the body so you're not surprised if we bring something back in a timely fashion to you.
Okay, thank you very much. 6:35, we are adjourned. Thank you.